Thank you. At this time, the speaker will share their experience, strength, and hope for approximately 55 minutes. Afterwards, it will switch to a 15-minute question and answer format. With that, I would like to introduce a very special speaker for this evening, Tomo from Charlotte, North Carolina. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom, alcoholic. Hope everyone's doing good tonight. Welcome to the new people. You're in for a ride, and a really good ride. So, and don't take my word for it. Stick around, as they say. Wait for the miracle to happen, which is basically stick around long enough to experience things you haven't experienced in maybe never, or in quite a while, for sure, if you're new. So definitely, I really do want to welcome you. New people are the lifeblood to AA, because, you know, if we didn't have new people, we would just sit around and get sick and tired of listening to ourselves share. Trust me, we need new people. We need new blood. So welcome. You know, if you're brand new to AA, so what a speaker meeting is the speaker shares what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And in the context of the 12 steps. So I'll just start, you know, highlight some things from my drinking history to qualify for being here. So I started drinking when I was around 15, you know, 13, a little bit 13, but, you know, 14, 15, drinking on the weekends. Not alcoholic to start with. I know some people start off from the gate just drinking heavily. So that wasn't my story. But when I did drink, when I started to drink, I noticed a wonderful thing. And I'm gonna quote Earl Hightower as one of my favorite speakers. And if you haven't heard Earl Hightower speak before, search the internet and try to get some of his tapes, because he's a wonderful speaker. So when I drank, when I first started drinking, and for a long time, what alcohol did for me was I was okay with where I was at to whoever I was speaking to. You know, there was I could finally be comfortable in my own skin. Okay. And this is why I love Earl Hightower. He says, you know, it says in the doctor's opinion, which is in the beginning of our main text, Alcoholics Anonymous, that that we like the effects produced by alcohol. And that effect it did for me is it killed the fear. It just killed the fear. And I didn't know it at the time, but I just knew I felt okay, you know, and that's what alcohol did for me. And it was a friend. And it was a friend until it turned on me later. So I was just very fear-based, very anxious person, and alcohol just made me relax. And so I started drinking, you know, like I said, when I was 15-ish. And, you know, I drank a lot from the get-go, but I could control it for the most part at the beginning. So I just drank on the weekends. But as my high school career progressed, I started drinking more and more. And I do believe I crossed some line. I'm not quite sure where. It's unimportant to me, really. But it was early on. So by the time I was a junior, I was, you know, alcohol started to affect me negatively, meaning the thing that was giving me relief was causing me anxiety. So I had to drink more. Again, I wasn't drinking every day or nothing like that. So, but I was drinking, trust me. And by the time I hit, by the time I went to college, okay, I really started drinking. Now, I come from a background, just back up a little bit. I come from a dysfunctional home in the sense that I was pretty much at age 13 left to my own devices. So mine wasn't necessarily physical abuse. It was just, or verbal abuse, really. It was just more of I was just on my own. I was by myself. And I won't get into too much of that, but that's just where I come from. So, I was, I guess abandoned is the best way to say it. And that really created a lot of hardships for me earlier on. And I do believe that does play a factor in my alcoholism. But I'm not going to get too much into that, but it does play a factor, for me. And anyways, so, I just started drinking more like a pig. I mean, it's really that simple, and by the time I got to college, I'd crossed that invisible line. I was drinking out of control. Okay. Didn't fail out of college. As a matter of fact, when I first went to college, I was making great grades because I knew how to play hard and work hard. Some alcoholics are like that. Now, later on, I became the alcoholic who was totally dysfunctional and effing up left and right. And, I'm the kind of alcoholic who goes to work, comes home, passes out in my work clothes, gets up and wears the same work clothes. That's where it took me. I mean, I was just, and my hygiene was horrible, and, how I took care of myself, it was, good times. Anyway, so I go into college more and more, and just, it was out of control. I joined AA when I was earlier. My dad had been sober. I knew about AA. And when I was 19 in September of 88, I joined AA. And when what happened with me in that I had 3.5 years of sobriety, and what that was for me, I worked the first 3 steps, went to meetings, and talked occasionally to my sponsor. I would say more than occasion. He lived on campus too, but he wasn't a step-oriented sponsor, and it was just a mess. It was just because I was untreated alcoholism. And what is an untreated alcoholism? You take the alcohol away, it's like anything. Then what are you left with? Well, you're left with, an untreated alcoholic, which they call it the ism, which is basically I was prey to fear and misery, depression. I was untreated, but I was able to stay sober on fear and meetings for 3.5 years. It was pretty amazing, actually. But then something came along that was very, life happens. And then I basically just started drinking again, and I heard this guy say one time, and I love it. He goes, if you've worked the steps and relapse, you've relapsed. That's a relapse. That's a true relapse. But you haven't worked the steps and you drink again, you just collapse. So I basically collapsed, and then I joined the Army, because when you drink, you're not having the best ideas. Now I'm not going to get into too much into that. I just was like, I wanted a sense of adventure. You know how alcoholics are. We drink for vainglory. We drink because we drink because we're sad about it. We drink no matter what. But, it fuels us. And I want a sense of adventure. I had just, collapsed basically. And I was like, I'm just going to join the Army, which was, for me, it was a blessing and a curse. So I joined the Army, and I just continued to drink more and more out of control. There's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous, first you have fun, then you have fun with problems, and you just have problems with problems. And for me, joining the Army was, it was a big geographic, as they say. And by the way, when we say geographic in AA, a good definition of a geographic is like, you're using in something externally to fix an internal problem. A spiritual malady really is what it is. And for me, it's like, if you're running towards something, that's a good thing. You're running from something, which was myself. That's not a good thing. Of course, I didn't understand any of this when I was in my early 20s. So I joined the Army. They had enough of my crap after about 2.5 years and kicked me out for drinking, even though technically it wasn't for drinking. But, and hindsight's always 20/20, by the way, and you can look back on, when you get sober, you look back on your drinking history, you look back on all the things you did when you were drinking, and And unmanageability, that's why it says in the first step, you know, in the second part, you know, that our lives have become unmanageable. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be external things. You know, I mean, everyone comes to AA with an internal unmanageability, crazy amount of fear, resentment, self-pity, selfishness, self-centeredness. You know, we all come into AA like that. So if you're new, welcome to AA. You're in the right place. You know, we all came in here from day one, you know, and there's no judgment or condemnation, or there shouldn't be, when you're new. And that's why you need to find people in AA that are non-judgmental, meaning doesn't mean they co-sign your crap. At the same time, there's a true energy of love and trying to help you, you know, because that's the spirit of AA, is really, it says in the literature, our only aim is to be helpful. And I really, that's so, especially when you're new. And welcome, because, you know, it's a great club, and it's not inclusive. It's all inclusive, which is one of the highlights of AA is so successful. So, you know, I got kicked out of the Army for my shenanigans, and which is unmanageability, right? Losing jobs due to alcoholism, right? That's unmanageability, period. Losing relationships, unmanageability, you know, not being present and being a good worker, you know, just unmanageability. So I got kicked out of the Army, and I just want to show you and highlight how alcoholism untreated is going to either, you know, there's a saying in the literature, jail's institution death. Okay. And I really don't think that's an overstatement. Okay. I really do believe, and I like to have a lot of fun in AA, and I joke about a lot of stuff, and as I should, you know, but when it comes to AA, I have a deadly earnestness, as they say, because I know, you know, it's a tiger, and the only way to treat it, subdue it, is through AA. Okay. When I say tiger, I mean the mental obsession. Okay. But anyway, so, you know, like I said, I got kicked out of the Army, and the unmanageability was so crazy, you know, and my powerlessness. The only thing that I cared about when I got out of the Army, and there was no self-reflection. There was no, well, yeah, I drank too much, or, you know, I was so not ready to quit drinking that my only concern when I got kicked out of the Army was whether if they were going to give me an airline ticket home, or if I was going to have to catch a Greyhound home. That was my main concern. And anyway, you know, good time. So, and welcome to AA, by the way. If you've lost jobs, people don't want to be around you. You know, people think you're an asshole. You know, people aren't talking to you. Welcome to AA. You know, you're place, because this is where we learn how to build relationships, build careers, and build things that have a lasting resonance, that has some depth and meaning to it, that really is going to carry you one day at a time for the rest of your life if you do this deal. And that's just guaranteed. And don't take my word for it. Stick around and have some faith in your own experience, okay? Because I'm not trying to sell you anything here. Like, I'm really not. You know, I'm just sharing what happened to me and what AA has done for me. So, like I said, I got kicked out of the Army. I get home, and like any good alcoholic who gets kicked out of the Army, I went to go live with my mother rent-free, right? And I proceeded to steal her Busch Light beers continuously from her fridge because I have not much money. And so I end up waiting tables, which is very conducive to drinking. And, you know, so I'm still living the lifestyle. And man, you know, that was in 95 when I got kicked out of the Army. And I was drinking very heavily. When I joined the Army in 92, at the end of 92, I really started to escalate my drinking, you know, and throughout the Army, crazy. And then shenanigans, and then living with my mom from October of 92 to this January of 98, it was nonstop. And that's alcoholism, by the way. It's a progressive disease. You're never going to get better at drinking, meaning being able to moderate it or control it. If you're a real alcoholic, when the time you get to AA, you've been an alcoholic for quite some time usually. Okay. So, and that's not everyone's story. Okay. But for the most part, that's pretty a general statement, because we're not going to, that's alcoholism. I can't control it. It's totally ruling me, and that's the powerlessness of it, and I really love metaphors. I love metaphors to describe things, to highlight the clarity of what I'm dealing with. Because I think it's real important to understand what we're dealing with. Alcoholism, it says in the doctor's opinion, and some other, not in the doctor's opinion, but and there's a solution, and more about alcoholism has a definition. But the one in there's a solution, it's italicized, and it basically, quote unquote, it's the inability to control my drinking. Period. That's alcoholism. Yeah, there's the ism, and there's all these things that we deal with, and whatnot, emotional disturbances, and that we deal with the steps later on. But keep it simple. I'm a big simple, and I can't control my drinking. That's just it. Once I start, I can't stop, and that's just the way it is. That's alcoholism. Now that's very simple, but I'm not willing to accept that fact until I've reached a certain level of pain. Period. That's I think it's kind of a cosmic joke in a way. I think God was like, well, first of all, I think God, when he started AA, he got Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob. He got Bill Wilson, who's a loudmouth stockbroker full of BS. Okay. I would have loved to have met the guy. He probably had great stories. He probably could hold court better than anybody. Okay. And God picks this guy who's living with who doesn't have a job, living with his wife's parents for a while, living off his wife for the last couple of years, and just drinking uncontrollably. And God picks this guy to be the founder of AA. Go figure, which, the meek shall inherit the earth type thing. So he gets Bill Wilson, and I'm thoroughly convinced God was like, what, these alcoholics are having a hard time. They're dying. I need to give them a special little program just for them, tailor-made, so they can, layman, don't make it too hard, make it simple, keep it, don't overcomplicate this thing. Alcoholics, don't, there's a saying, you can be too smart to be in AA, but you can't be too dumb. And what they mean by that is that, don't overthink this thing. Okay. It's an action program. Okay. Get a little bit of knowledge. It's good. Apply it. Done. You want to be honest? Okay. Be honest in all your affairs, but that's 12-step stuff, but I digress. But so, all right, where was I? Living with my mother. Yes. Good times. So, and my mom was just, bless her heart, she was an alcoholic too, and she put up with my crap. And then I moved to Clearwater, Florida in May of '97 because I had a friend who had a moving company, and he was like, why don't you start? And he was a drinking buddy. And he goes, why don't you go to Florida? I'll set you up and you can do this moving business. And I was like, I'm down. I had nothing going on. I'm not one of these alcoholics who has this high ambition when I'm drinking, and I'm going to tackle the world, and I'm going to be, these dreams are going to come true. And no. I sit at the bar and I talk about it. And so anyway, I moved to Florida. Of course, I'm drinking. The moving company doesn't go anywhere, and that's almost like a given, right? So, and then what happens to me is that by December of '97, I'm ready to quit. I'm almost ready. It's run its course. I am 29. And what happened to me was, as I was living in Florida, I went to go visit my sister. And then what she told me basically was this, I went to her house, and she saw me get off the plane. I was drunk, and she goes, you can't come to my house if you're drinking. For whatever reason, when I heard those words, I felt that incomprehensible demoralization they talk about in AA. And it's not some big, like, you son of a gun, you can't come here, you're a horrible person. My sister just said that to me. You can't, excuse me, you can't come into my house if you're still drinking. And that just like, I felt very demoralized. So what happened is, like, on January 1st, and it wasn't a New Year's Eve revolution, because I believe you don't get to pick your sobriety date. I really believe that. I think you're done when the gorilla is done screwing you, and you've reached the high threshold. You've reached a low threshold of pain. You're done. So I got sober, went back to Florida, and then I started getting involved in AA again. And this was in, my journey started, this new sobriety started in, January of 98. And, what happened to me was I stayed in Florida a couple of years, had 2 different sponsors, worked about half the steps with each one. I moved to California after about 2 years. And that's when I really started to do AA the way it needed to be done, meaning having one sponsor, working steps 1 through 12 with that sponsor, and really get more ingrained in AA. And I don't recommend that for anyone. That should have happened. But once again, I'm not willing to do the work, just like I was in my first time sobriety. I just wasn't willing to do the work yet. Amazing how I'm thick-headed. I don't want to look at myself. I don't want to go there. I don't want to have to make amends. I don't want to take the time it needs to sponsor other people. I'm not going to do that. So, now I treat my alcoholism much more serious than I did when I was new. Just by the grace of God, I didn't drink during that time. Got a little sobriety, worked some steps. I guarantee if I didn't work any steps, and I worked about 1 through 7, 1 through 8 with 2 different sponsees, but I would have drank again if I didn't get, of course I would. I'm a firm believer that AA is like insulin. You don't do it every day. Over time, a drink will have a drink in your hand. So anyway, I started on my journey in California in the early 2000s, and I got a sponsor, did my amends, and started sponsoring other people. And and Anthony mentioned a 12-step experience, and AA is the 12 steps. I mean, even when you're at a meeting, you're doing a 12-step. Like I'm sharing my experience, strength, and hope with you guys, and hopefully somebody will get something out of what I said. And that's what I prayed, earlier. Well, I didn't pray that specifically. What I prayed was, God, just work for me so, people will need to hear what they need to hear through you, And so my experience with the steps is, deepened over the years. And I've really learned, I think clarity is so important in AA because we can get really heady sometimes. We can get really going off on a tangent sometimes and not saying the things that were really important. Step 1 is basically real simple. It's like, look, first off, it says in the doctor's opinion, now I have a mind that thinks about drinking constantly. And then it triggers me to pick up the drink. Now, once I actually take the drink, then I can't control it. Okay. So I'm sober now, and it says in our literature, it's the disease is centered in the mind. And what that really means is that I have a mind that thinks about drinking constantly when I first come into AA. So I have to have a higher power remove those thoughts of drinking is the bottom line. It says in We Agnostics that, real simply, it says that it's the mission statement of AA. It's We Agnostic. It says the main purpose of this book is to enable us to find a power greater than ourselves, which will solve our problem. And that problem is singular, and they mean the alcohol problem, okay? Now you break that problem down a little, and it's the mental obsession, because I'm not drinking right now. I'm drinking some coffee, but I'm not drinking any alcohol right now. So what's going to make me go back to drinking? Right. Because when I was drinking, I had some sobriety between my drinks. I wasn't totally drinking all the time. So what made me go back to that horrible life? My mental obsession, as they say in the literature, in other words, I have a mind that won't stop and a body that won't quit, which I thought was a great way to explain the dilemma we're in, So just me going, you know what, alcohol's bad. That was a bad weekend. I'm done. Or I'm just going to have 2 and I'm done. If it was as simple as that would connotate control, right? So very simple, very simple. That means I would just have consequences and I'll be like, I'm done. Now I'm a big fan of paradox, and I think consequences don't mean anything. And I think consequences mean everything, because, when I'm drinking, I'm having consequences. Like I said, I got kicked out of the Army, I didn't even get into relationships I lost, and, of course, nothing was going my way because it takes a lot of time to drink. And when you're drinking alcoholically, everything goes to the backside. And I'm just thinking about drinking. That's all I'm doing 24/7. I'm either thinking about it or I'm doing it. So like I said, you get in AA, step 1, mental obsession. Okay. That's what needs to be scrubbed. God's going to scrub me wanting to drink. Simple as that. Okay. Because if he does that, I don't have to worry about picking up the drink, and that endless cycle of drinking, because I haven't put any alcohol in my body. That mental obsession has to be curbed, and that's what AA does. Okay. It says in the literature, it would be academic or pointless, or it would be a moot point, if the alcoholic never took that first drink. And what drives me to that first drink is my mental obsession. Okay. Second step. Okay. Came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And what they mean is, in the AA context of that step, is the sanity of not wanting to drink and are drinking. So, sure, I have other issues that I'm a little cuckoo, okay, about with. So, it's the rudiments of faith. Okay. Step 2. Okay. It connotates process too. Came to believe. And then it says, I believe right now, totally. Okay. So it's a progression of faith. And you start to get orientated towards a spiritual experience. And if you have problems with God, or even with that word, or, you get to pick your own higher power in AA. And I'm not here to sugarcoat it and say, well, you have to believe in God. I'm not going to be dogmatic, but at the same time, you have to submit in AA. Now, that higher power could be your AA group if you don't believe in God, and then you can go from there. I'm not here to convert you. You work the steps, see how you feel, and put labels on that yourself, and see where you think spirituality is at hand. And you get to decide that for yourself, in Bill's story, Ebby talks about, Bill's just, going, I don't know about this God thing. I don't know. And I think Ebby was probably frustrated. He was just like, hey, listen, dude, why don't you just pick your own concept and just do that? And Bill was like, I can work with that, and that's a really good thing. We get to pick our own God concept, and that's a personal thing. You get to develop that thing, and that will morph, and that will change. And that's a great thing. We're not, like I said, I'm not here to convert you, man. I'm not here to convert you. People convert themselves for the work they do. Okay. It's like going to the gym. I can't get muscles for you. You work the machines yourself, and then you get some muscles. So, but I will say this, and I love this. I heard this not too long ago. It's like, you work the 12 steps, God's coming whether you want him or not. That being said, like step 3, you make a decision. You haven't moved a muscle yet. You just made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand it. Okay. So you just turn your will and your life. Okay. All right. I can do that. Well, move forward. Don't overthink it. And of course, then it says in chapter 5, this is where we, next we launch on a vigorous course of action. So the first 3 steps are conclusions of the mind. Okay. You have a problem that alcohol effed your drinking up, the unmanageability. 2, all right, all right, I can start to believe in this thing. Sure. Why not? And I will say this, there is a saying called fake it till you make it. And some people poo-poo that statement. I don't. It's like, I think that ultimately you want to come from a place of genuine and being genuine and being authentic, of course. But, if you fake it sometimes till you make it, you know what? So what? Welcome to AA. Got a lot of latitude here. Step 3, like I said, conclusion. Yeah, my will and my life in your care. Fine. Let's do it. All right. Let's just jump into a 4 step. Okay. Now this start to do some clearing away. I see steps 4 through 9, basically. My analogy, my metaphor, it's like you have clogged pipes. When you have clogged pipes, you put Drano down the pipe, clears it up. And that's what the house cleaning steps do, 4 through 9. And that's what they're called. If you're new, they're house cleaning steps. It's just to get right with your past. Okay. And start to heal from that stuff and start to unclog these pipes that are these internal pipes. So you can get down to your soul is what I believe, which I think the soul is not corrupted. Soul's never corrupted. I'm confused sometimes. It's like, oh, his soul's corrupted. Her soul's corrupted. No, it's not. I think soul is pure. I think what's corrupted is the crap that we put on it. And another good analogy is like when you have the sun. In space, the sun is always shining. It's always shining, clear. But the earth sometimes has clouds over it. And that's what I have when I come into AA. I got clouds all over me. I got stormy, dark clouds that are just all over me. Thunder showers. So So step 4, I get to write down this resentment list. I get to write down why I have the resentment, and then I get to what does that affect in me, my personal security, my ambitions, my self-esteem, my fear, my sex relations, just name a few. And you start to do these columns in the 4-step to just kind of like see not just the resentment, okay, but this is to see a pattern emerge. And you start to see that, it's amazing when I work with new people sometimes, is they don't think they have resentment sometimes. And then, when they it's step 4 for a reason. We got to get our head out of the fog to the degree that we can actually look at ourselves in a decent way, or internally look within in a decent way. And that, and that takes some time, to clear that head. I'm not saying delay the 4-step because you're all foggy, but there is a clearing out phase, so you start working, your 4-step, you get your resentment list, and then you do a fear list. The fear is basically just, and we talk a lot about fear at AA, and it's fear is a bedevilment. I just talked to my sponsor today about it. It's still something that, I don't have the level of faith that I would like to have. Now, I definitely have more faith than when I came in, but it's an evolutionary process. And I think being present in the now, which is 11-step stuff, but if you're really present in the now, that's a beautiful place to be. But I'll talk more about that in 11th step. But so, you got all this fear. You write out on your fear list, no matter what the fears are, how ridiculous it sounds. Doesn't matter if you're afraid of it, put it down. Okay. Then you do your sexual inventory, and there's you write down your whole sexual history. Then you start to see where you were effed up in that area, and they have specific instructions about these things. I'm just kind of hitting the highlights of it. I won't get into too much detail, but you start to see patterns emerge, and that's another thing. When you do this 4-step, you start to see patterns emerging, and start to see, why you do what you do, because it says in the literature, bottles were but symbols. What they really mean is that when I have deep resentment, deep fear, deep self-centeredness, okay, deep self-pity, those lead to the drink, okay? Those lead to the drink. They clog up my pipes. And when those aren't dealt with, I'm going to continue this cycle of drinking, thinking about it, drinking it, thinking about it, drinking, okay, just on and on. So I have to get rid of these things, okay, and add new things, more faith, more love for my fellow man, okay, gratitude, just to name a few, willingness, honesty. You start to add these principles. You take that crap away, then you put in the plus column all these other principles that you start to live by more and more. Then you start to feel a little bit different because you're taking the action about what those principles are about. Okay, then you start to feel better. And it's just as simple as that, because let's face it, we just want to be happy and feel better. I mean, it can't get more simpler than that. When I mean happy too, I mean a deep contentment. I mean, that implies a lot of things, happiness. And life's not always happy, but I'll start to learn how to really live a true and healthy life if I do AA the way it's laid out. And I can handle healthy pain and deal with these things and not run away from it. And deal with life head on. And that's a beautiful thing when you can do that and not check out, and not just disappear. And we do that. We can do that in sobriety. I mean, if you welcome to sobriety, you will definitely see other ways you check out. I won't get into that. And so, then you do your 5th step. Okay. Well, back up. There's one thing I want to talk about the 4th step. There's an accountability column. Okay. And accountability is really important, because I didn't realize how unaccountable I was. And if I'm not accountable, I'm a victim. That's just the bottom line. Harry Truman was one of our presidents. He had a saying, the buck stops here. So the buck stops here. It's like, how I react to a situation, that's on me. You do whatever you want. You can have the worst poor behavior, but how I react to that is on me. And I need to work AA if I'm having poor reactions to your bad behavior. I can't use you as a reason to be a jerk or do some bad behavior, poor behavior, unhealthy behavior. And doing the 4-step creates self-awareness, okay? And self-awareness is a beautiful thing. I heard recently there is no bad self-awareness. And that's really true. It might be uncomfortable, but once you're aware of something, you can label it And then you can start to have a little bit of power, and with God's help, you can go from there. You can either get rid of it, or it could be a good self-awareness, whatever the self-awareness is. I'm just kind of highlighting things that are unhealthy for us, but and I'll touch upon the positive things here later. But so, step 5, you just, everything you wrote down, you share with your sponsor, and then they will share some of their experience, strength, and hope with it. They'll point out patterns. They'll see, and if it's a decent sponsor, not even the best sponsor in the world, he's a decent sponsor. He's going to be non-judgmental. He's going to be kind. He's going to be loving, because he's done the process himself. And it's so important to be with people who are non-judgmental, and we're real sensitive. And I understand that. I get that. There's a saying in AA, we'll love you till you love yourself. And there's some truth to that, because how you exhibit AA to your fellow man is a healing thing in and of itself. And you can just be having a casual conversation. The spirit is alive in you. Okay. And when it's alive in you and you're in touch with that, it's a healing presence to other people. And you don't even have to say a word sometimes. We do affect others, okay? There's always a ripple effect, either negative or positive, always. Whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. You're either going to walk into a room with a little bit of a positive energy about you, and it's going to affect the room, or you're not going to. And I'm using kind of new age terms a little bit, so bear with me. In other words, you go into a room and you're just, you're complaining, you're whining, you're full of yourself. And it doesn't have to be that extreme, okay? But there's degrees. But if you're more towards that, watch how other people react around you. Now, you're more towards the other thing. You have a little bit more gratitude. You're being decent and kind to other people. You're maybe offering solutions. You're being of service, Notice how other people react. There's a ripple effect. And it's a beautiful thing to watch if you're doing healthy behavior. And I'm not saying this from a grandiose, like, look at me, oh, I'm just Mr. Nice Guy, or I'm just Mr. Spiritual here, But I do think it's important to own the fact that we affect others and ourselves, or the way we talk to ourselves too. But right, we do our 5th step, we share this to our sponsor. Step 6 and 7, and I love AA. It's baby steps. You don't even, step 6, and step 6 is pretty easy. Just have a really good attitude. You're entirely ready to get rid of these other things that are hurting you. And, you might have some issues that don't kill you on rock level bottoms. There's a saying, and this is the step that differentiates the boys from the men. Let me rephrase. I'm going too fast here. It's that step 6. This is a step that differentiates the boys from the men. What they mean is that, I'm doing some of these things because it gives me some pleasure, okay? But it's not killing me. But it's not, within the best spiritual aptitude I could be, okay? So it's a little bit harder to give those up because they're not killing me. I get a little pleasure. But it's still, a good friend of mine talks about character defects, short-term pain, long-term pleasure. And I love that, And there's a saying too, we enter the broad highway in AA. And what that means is we get rid of these negative things and replace them with healthier things. And our world opens up, and you will experience that if you do the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Step 7 is basically, step 6, you got a good attitude about getting rid of these things. Step 7, hey, God, take them. Done. Can't have them anymore. And then we'll grab them because we're pleasure seekers in AA. I can't drink now, and until I get more fully developed spiritually, I'm going to find whatever I can find to get a little pleasure, and it might not be the best thing for me, and I won't get into details with that, but, just, a little detail, gambling, lust, obsessive compulsive behavior about certain things, which we get off on, but it's like, this isn't too good. In step 8 and 9, 8, you make a list of all people you had harmed. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about step 9 yet. Step 8, you just list them, all the people that you were crappy to your whole life. You write it down. Steps 9, and there's a little bit more instructions with that. I won't get into that, but step 8, that's kind of the gist of it. Step 9 is, with the help of a sponsor, in step 9, you try to get a gauge on what types of amends to make to certain types of people. Of course, we're not here. It says, we make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or us. We're not here to hurt other people, okay? We're here to clean our side of the street off, but not at the expense of causing you pain. And that's not what we're here for. But there is a way to make amends effectively, even if you can't go directly to that person. And that's good sponsorship, and they'll give you guidance with that. And, you know, each case is a little bit different. There is nuances there. And, but like I said, you work with a sponsor, you find exactly, you know, who I actually need to go to, who I need to stay away from. And the people I need to stay away from, there is a way to clear your side of the street off with those people. And it's about us, you know, it's about, you know, it's symbiotic, because when you make these amends, and it's freeing, you know, I mean, I've heard so many wonderful stories in AA, and, you know, and with my own life, you know, I'll give you a brief example. You know, my mom, I made my amends back in 2003, you know, with her, and 2002, 2003. And then, you know, she, you know, and through circumstance, I ended up living with her, you know, she got lung cancer, and I lived with her for the last 6 months of her life. And that was more of a, you know, type of, even though I did my formal amends with her years earlier, I was able to be there for her and care for her the best I could at that time. And that's only because of AA. And, you know, that was a wonderful thing, you know, because there was times when I really treated her poorly. And this was a way, and the circumstance, it was definitely a God thing, you know, through the circumstance. And it was a wonderful experience. It was sad, very sad, but that's okay. We can be very sad in AA, and that's okay. And wonderful thing. And so with step 10, basically, step 10 is about the present here. It's about, I have a 10-foot wide street, 10-foot wide street, and I have a 5-foot wide broom. And, you know, where had I been, you know, selfish, dishonest, resentful, or afraid? Do spot check inventories throughout the day. When those things prop up, I ask God to remove it, you know, turn my thoughts to somebody I can help, making amends when necessary, and keep my side of the street clean. Okay. And step 11, it's about growing in God consciousness. And what does that mean? It's about, you know, people get into organized religion, you know, people have a buffet and they take from all kinds of things. Some people don't get back into work. It doesn't matter. You feel whatever feels right to you, you know, whatever resonates in your heart. By this time, when you get to step 11, you'll have more of a clue about what feels right to you, because you got the pipes cleaned, right? Got the pipes cleaned. So now it's like you're in touch with something that is new, fairly new, okay? And you can start to roll with that. You can start to trust your intuition more. You can say, yeah, that feels right, man. I'm going to rock with that. That resonates with me. Yeah. And it doesn't have to resonate with other people. You know, there's a saying in every AA medallion, you know, it says, to thine own self be true, you know, so be true to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. You know, truth is paramount, you know, be true to yourself. And even if it goes against the grain, who cares? Doesn't matter, you know? So, and also what I love about step 11 is that, you know, it opens up this whole world, and you can start to explore different things. You can start to understand what synchronicity is, meaningful coincidences, God shots, you know, what excites you, through prayer and meditation, right? You know, and literally, you know, sometimes I just say the 11th step when I'm not even in any anguish. God, give me knowledge of the world for me to power to carry that out. Sometimes that's what I say, you know, but I wake up and there's specific directions in step 10 and 11 in the big book. And I use those 80 pages, 84, 85, 86, 87. And you use those as a blueprint for your day-to-day living. So I definitely would use that blueprint, you know, and part of it includes the 10th step and then the 11th step. And then hitting the highlights here. Step 12, real quick. It's really something, you know, everything that you've gotten from AA and all the steps everything you've gotten, you turn around and you give it to the next person. Okay. You just give it to them. You know, you have to give it away to keep it. So you are obligated for a successful sobriety to pass this on to somebody else. And it's a necessity. It's not a luxury. See, because remember, all these steps, the number one thing they're geared towards is keeping the mental obsession at bay. And if I leave out step 12, I'm going to end up drinking again. Okay. That's just the way that rolls. But once again, don't take my word for it and look at other people. anybody that has long-term sobriety, they sponsor other people. And you have to do that. It's suggested, but you know what I mean. And, you know, practice these principles in all our affairs. There's principles for all the steps. There's multiple principles for each step, you know, honesty, willingness, open-mindedness, forgiveness, restitution, accountability, service, you know, and it's a process like everything else. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you start to learn this stuff. You go back over it. When you start to sponsor other people, you, in a kind of a weird way, get to work the steps again. You know, you get to see things, and then you can talk to your sponsor. Self-awareness evolves. You become aware of things that you weren't aware of before. Oh, I need to address this. This has always been here. I love the word enlightenment, but it's kind of hard. It's basically being aware, being hip to something that was already there. You know, like I said, there's no bad self-awareness. So it's like, oh shit, I didn't know about that myself. Okay, there you go. And so I've kind of like talked about, you know, what it's like now through this, but specifically, you know, for the last couple of minutes, you know, what it's like now for me is kind of really keeping it simple with AA, because I love to pontificate sometimes, and I think there's a place for that, but not necessarily in AA. You know, I'm a big fan of psychology. There's a cause and effect to everything we do. I think, you know, but that's AA too, when you're talking about people's motives, your motives, why I do what I do. You know, I think that's real important. I think when you really can address what my motive is, and you can keep asking whys to yourself, it's like a hot knife through a stick of butter. You can get to the nitty gritty of things. It's like, why do I do this? Okay, I do that because of this. Now, why do I do that? And sometimes you don't have to go too far down that why hole. But I think that it's an effective tool, which is just being honest, right? I'm just breaking down being honest a little bit more, you know, because I think that's an important tool. There is a reason why we're afraid of this. There's a reason why we're afraid of that. You know, there's a reason why I'm being a jerk right now. There's a reason why this and that. And I'm not doing analysis paralysis with it per se, because you can get, you know, you can overthink it sometimes. And you got to find that out through trial and error, because I love AA. You're going to hit both sides of the highway because we're out of balance. Okay, baby. We're just out of balance, you know, and especially when we're new. So we have to learn how to stay in the middle of the lane a little bit. We start to, you know, not be so reactionary, all or nothing. It's either I'm at one with God or I'm just down in the mountain valley, either high mountain, low valley. There's nothing in between there. What's going on? You know, it's what AA does. It kind of levels us out. You know, I mean, AA is like shock absorbers for you. It's like makes this ride a little bit smoother. You know, when I'm drinking, man, my shocks are gone and I'm just overreacting, and I'm either like, oh, all high or all low, you know, just going all over the highway and just acting, not much emotional stability is what I'm really saying. Right. So, and that's what the steps do. They even you out. You start to learn and do it repetition. There's a great thing about, you know, the tortoise and the hare thing. And I think AA is done well when you're like the tortoise. Doesn't mean you don't have a sense of urgency with certain things, but when you do this work steadily over time, you start to smooth out, and sometimes you're not going to feel things at first. You know, you can't trust your eyes sometimes. You just got to trust the process. And I'll even go as far as say, don't trust the process. Just do the next right action. Okay. You know, and start to, and just do that continuously. It's like losing weight sometimes. It's like you don't notice it at first, but over time you notice it. It's like going to the gym, you don't notice it. And AA can be more profound at times and more like, whoa, okay, I'm getting these things. And then that can happen too. Everyone's journey's a little bit different, you know. But you know, AA's been has been a lifesaver. I mean, I don't know where I would be without it today. You know, I talked about being in the present, and I think that I'm starting to develop that better and better. You know, when I'm totally present in the moment, the fear's not there, because fear is just basically anxiety from the thinking ahead, right? And usually we're alcoholics, so we like to come up with worst case scenarios, catastrophic thinking, and for you know it, I'm living in that. You know, I've definitely been able to remove that from my life with the help of AA, and just be present and be with other people. And God's in the present. You know, I really do believe that God's in the now, you know, so if I can stay where God is, That's real important. That's 11-step stuff. And I love, there's other books too. You can supplement AA with specific techniques with that, being in the now. And that's real important, to be centered and be where my feet's at. And when I'm centered in the now, I can be there for you, because I'm okay. I'm not living in my fear. I can put myself aside and make room for other people. And, the word religion means to realign, and I was thinking the other day, it's to reconnect is what that means too. And that's what we do in AA. Okay. We not only connect with who we really are, and not our BS self, ego, whatever you want to call it. We get in touch with who we really are, authentic self. And we're able to really connect with others. Once I connect with myself, I can connect better with you. And I would say it works outside. When you're around people who are more authentic or just more spiritually based, that has a healing effect on you too. And you're able to be more authentic. And I'll give an example with this. You're ever at a meeting when somebody shares something that's real and raw and vulnerable, and you hear that? And then somebody else shares something that's real, that's raw and vulnerable. It's contagious. Being authentic and connecting is contagious for other people. So that harkens back to what I was saying. When you're like that, people are more relaxed around you. They're more easygoing. They're more who they really are. Tied into your spirit, and is your spirit. You can break that down further, but I'm not going to do that. It's just and people put you at ease. You ever been around those kind of people? You're like, oh, I'm attracted to this person. You don't have to intellectually know why, but you're just attracted to them. That's their spirit, man. As simple as that. Their spirit. These people are living, they're connected, and your spirit's automatically all inclusive, all loving, caring, wants to really know what's going on with you, and that's what we've always wanted. And it came in different forms. For alcoholics, the booze, right? We just want, it's called spirits for a reason. We just want to connect with spirit. That's the real spirit, right? That's the real spirit. And if you're new, don't shortchange yourself. AA is very simple. And sometimes it's hard to do because we're afraid, and that's okay too, but just do that work. And that's what courage is. It's to have purpose and to have heart and to walk through these fears. Okay. And we go to meetings and we talk to people, we gain in strength, and we can confront these things, our demons, for lack of a better word. And it's available to anyone. And I've seen people who in my judgmental, crappy way at times, they're that, I'll end with this. Okay. The person that's chairing this or started this meeting, Anthony. Now I've seen Anthony, I remember talking to Anthony. Okay. And doing my best AA 12-step I could possibly do. And he just wasn't ready yet. He had the beast on him and he wasn't ready. And that's okay, because that's not my decision. It's not my decision. And he has to hit a sufficient bottom to get to where he had to go. And he did hit a bottom, real bottom, and I was always, concerned about his well-being, and rightfully so. But then I also have to realize too, God's got this. Everyone's right where they're supposed to be, drinking or not drinking, drinking or sober. Everyone's where that's part about being in the now. So Anthony was able to hit his bottom and really turn. And he's more of a dramatic story than some other alcoholics I know. But I know he's a dramatic guy, and that's a good thing. And but that's his story, and I saw it all unfold before me. And now he's got 4+ years of sobriety, just doing AA the way it's outlined. And if you're new and you're not quite sure about this, that's okay too. Don't have contempt prior to investigation. Don't say, I know AA without having fully done the 12 steps. And that's what a lot of people do sometimes, because, people do. So, I think that's pretty much it for me. And I appreciate y'all listening. I hope I said something that helped somebody out there. And I want to thank Anthony for asking me to speak. And it's been a pleasure. And I hope, I appreciate it. Thanks.